on this.
Oh, it's all
It's
right.
been quite busy lately.
I would imagine with the immense success of the Kickstarter. Congratulations on that, by the way.
Well, thank you. Um, sorry, I've been out of the loop a little bit. What format are we doing? And
Oh, that's fine. Yeah, I'm going to be doing a fairly long form report on augmented reality as a whole, probably within the next week or two,
cool.
and especially with the recent reports of Apple and Valve collaborating on their own augmented reality stuff, which I do want to get your opinion on definitely within this.
Sure.
Yeah. And also, with my work being incredibly, or at least known for being incredibly Valve centric, you are an excellent person to talk to for many reasons. Main of which being you gave my favorite interview ever, probably in the history of anything related to your departure from Valve.
Oh,
I mean, honestly, I understand
yeah.
that wasn't the best of situations, but without a doubt, no one ever gives them the kind of crap that they deserve sometimes. And
Wow.
you definitely opened, personally, my eyes to be able to look through what existed. And if that interview never happened, my existence on the platform wouldn't be here.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, oh, wow.
The line, it's like high school, like you said, like it's like high school, there's cliques and all that you need to fit in. That definitely drove me to do my own research and find out if you were telling the truth. And my God, you told the truth. So,
Oh, thanks. I'm glad because when I did that interview, people like a lot of haters came
mhm,
out and I actually, well, I don't. Sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself.
mhm.
Probably want to ask these during the interview,
Well,
but
this is the interview. This isn't going to be I'm not going to be professionally introducing this or anything. I'm just going to take bits and pieces out of this in order to be able to
oh, okay,
give credibility to what I'm saying.
sure.
And there is a bit to cover. I don't want to take up too much of your time. I understand that everything's very busy, but I have.
Yeah, I think Amy got. I had another meeting after that, but she's pushed it out, so I think we're okay to take our time
Okay.
and answer all your questions you want. Yeah, I mean, when I departed Valve, as it's not unique to them, almost
Hmm.
every company you leave, they try to buy your silence with
Hmm.
a severance package, and they offered me such a small amount for how much they made me give up to go there. It's like, no, this is my story. I'm not going to keep quiet about it. It's like worth more to me to have kind of the truth out than
Mm.
the tens of thousands of dollars they were trying to give me to do it or to keep my silence.
It's interesting to think of. You did receive quite a bit of hate. There was a lot of naysaying related to it, but at the time that you had said that, they were still coming off of the success of Portal 2 and all of the goodwill that had generated. In
Mm-hmm.
modern day, they don't have that kind of goodwill much anymore. So retroactively, your words have very much become significantly more important and a lot more believable to
Oh,
the
cool.
general person. Because the longer that time moves on, the more stories come out that you were not an isolated incident. That happens all the time. Um,
Yep. Yep.
so,
I mean, when that story broke,
mhm.
um, my email was flooded with folks at Valve, and I would say 50% of them were like, high five. And then the other 50% are like, what are you doing? And
Mm,
almost like you bit the hand that fed you. I'm like,
mhm.
yeah, I don't know. And I don't regret it one bit.
Yeah, like I said, I'm very grateful that you chose the path that ended up happening.
I
Um,
actually, I think Valve, for all of their flaws, and when you look at the entire landscape, Valve generally as a company tries to do the right thing,
mhm,
and I think they treat their customers fantastically, and I totally bought into that Kool-Aid when I was there, and I still believe that's true. Like, generally they're trying to do the right thing even though they just screw up so badly at times.
mhm,
um, doesn't Unlike, in comparison, like a Facebook who just looks at their users as a commodity that they could just hoover up all their personal information and sell to the lowest bidder. Valve's not aligned that way, and it's not in their best interest to do shady stuff.
mhm.
So they they do a lot of great stuff. So when I went there, it was, Valve had like this fantastic reputation. I'm assuming it's still true that they're kind of the good guys in the industry, and maybe Gabe's a little bit of a bully at times, but in general, these are the good guys. And so it was easy to buy into it.
I mean, things have changed. I don't know how much you follow up on the goings on of Valve currently, but
you could probably educate me on kind of shifts and
things aren't great.
Fill me in. I'd be curious to hear this.
They have one major project coming out within the next 2 quarters, and that's a Half-Life game based on virtual reality. They seem to be doing some significant augmented reality works internally in secret. That's part of the hardware team now, which is a bit infuriating because they had the technology in 2014, 2013, and now they're following up on it because they're realizing the consumer base for virtual reality isn't really there yet.
And what year was I there? I mean, that was one of the first things we did was augmented reality. And Gabe gave me the mission when we put the hardware lab together. He's like, Microsoft is threatening us with excluding the store from being on Windows 8, which the Windows 8 Metro interface, if that would have taken off, could have really hurt Valve. You wouldn't be able to sell games through that interface. And so he's like, if we're going to do this, I want to like take Valve to the next level. I want the entire family participating in the living room on Steam. I want grandma, grandpa, all the way down to the grandkids having a great time on Steam. And so we did all that fundamental research, VR, AR, various things. And AR just rose to the top every time of like, this is, the mandate we were given. And it worked so well for that. And just the political environment, Michael Abrash and those folks just like kept squashing it, and it never got any traction.
Yeah, it's I mean, there's a lot that I could tell you that's gone on over the years. I'm doing an interview. Hi, thank you. Kind of important. Thank you. Shut the door, please. I live with a few people. Not my mom. That wasn't my mom coming down into the basement. That's not that. So
no judgments. No judgments.
Yeah, that's fine. When you were hired on, would have been like 2012, 2013. Was Alan Yates and Michael Abrash there yet?
Abrash was there. I hired. I was the absolute first. Abrash was working on Dota, and Ambender and them were up on Dota. And now I'm trying to channel the names of the folks. Like, it was a really small crew that were kind of lobbying for this, and Gabe. And then I hired everyone: Monty, Alan. Ben
really?
Now, yeah. I brought them all on. Gabe, the backstory on my situation of being brought in to put the whole team together was, I think it was Michael Ambender had discovered me and had brought my existence to the attention of Gabe. And they kept sending people out for 6 months to try to persuade me to come even talk to them. And I was pretty happy on the project that I was on at the time. And I didn't have a lot of faith that a software company would, follow through on hardware. And so I just kept blowing them off. And finally, Gabe flew to Portland, Oregon, where I was living at the time, took me out to lunch. And he's like, we're doing big things. I'm committed. Just come up next week and just spend an afternoon with us. It's not an interview. And I'm like, okay, I can do that for you. So I fly up there. It was a lie. It was pretty much an interview. They stuck me. And they stuck me in a room. I know Abrash was there. Ambender, I think, was there. And Gabe was there. And just 5-6 other people. And it was just this rapid fire thing. Like, okay, we want to make a game controller. How would you do it? And I'd be like, well, I'd go to Tynam and I would just do joint development with them. And it was just this rapid fire thing. And then, I don't know, Gabe probably did some kind of no signal, and everyone got up and left. And Gabe took me down to the 4th floor, and he's like, this whole 4th floor is yours. You're going to have, unlimited budget. And then he started telling me this whole mission that he wanted to give me of like bringing the whole family together. And I was like, holy cow, like, how can I pass this up? And so I took like they wanted to seal the deal. They're like, don't fly home this afternoon. Like, just stay the night, come back.
Yeah.
It's so surreal. So they're like, I had no clothes with me. They're like, we'll send someone out and buy you some clothes. And they actually gave me like a Portal shirt or something. So by the second day, I was totally indoctrinated. I had a Portal shirt on, and they'd like bought me underwear and socks or something. And I came back to the office, and they kept closing the deal. And then I went off for like a week or so, and just kind of thought of like this thesis of like, how would I run a hardware lab that was with this like grand mission? And I came back with, what we should do is like 1/3 researchers, 1/3 maker prototype people, and 1/3 product people, and just bring them together and just mash them all together and start figuring out how to build living room products. And the first couple of years, it was fantastic. It was amazing. Did all this fundamental research. We threw like unlimited money at experiencing these things. We would put, hundreds of thousands of dollars, millions of dollars into like testing AR. Like, just, we don't care. We're just brute forcing it. Like, what could the experience be like? And I like to say, like, I got to see 20 years into the future during that time period, because we were putting Dota on the table and doing esports. Like, esports was still a little bit new at that point. We were like spectating Dota in AR and like, oh my God, this is amazing. Like, we took Left 4 Dead and we hacked it apart and took the director out of it, and we were using a wand, and we were letting one person sit on the couch while someone else played on the TV. And the person on the couch sitting next to him was dropping health packs and zombies into the map while their friend played on the TV. It was insanely fun. And it's like, yeah, this is the future right here. And then, everything just went sideways when we started to break off into different projects and try to productize things. Part of my thesis of like, researchers and stuff, there was like this huge divide between researchers and then everybody else. And the poor like maker prototypers were stuck in the middle. Like, well, I like making things for the researcher people, but I also like making things for the product people as well. I always thought of myself, I found myself on the product side.
Yeah. When it started productizing all the research that you had been putting together, would you say that it was this research and development that led to, and I mean, this isn't any disrespect towards your work or anything, the Steam boxes themselves didn't seem to have taken off. The Steam controllers, although incredibly great at what they do, they have a lot of naysayers because of like, it's not, because Xbox has had the same controller for like 20 years, so people don't want to like get out of their comfort zone. And then of course everything that came out of the virtual reality spaces has yet to be seen. If you were the person that was told this is your floor, you have unlimited budget, would it be fair to attribute most, if not all, of Valve's current hardware stuff originally came from you at one point?
That's a little bold to say it was for me. I mean, we were all researching it, and I was really doubling down on AR, and so I mean, the pieces that I worked on, like I had the first wands, I had things that resembled the knuckle pretty early on. Like it was pretty freaking awesome. We had haptics on each of the button locations, so things could slide through your fingers, and it was 6 degrees of I wish that was in the knuckles. I mean, it was fucking awesome. Maybe next gen.
Wow.
I mean, some of the stuff that never saw the light of day, I mean, we had to explore and find the limits. So there was like a glove that I helped put together that had muscle wires in it that could, when you squeeze your fingers, it could pull against your fingers. You feel like you're grabbing like a cube or a sphere. That was pretty neat. On the VR side, like we were all helping each other. So I was not a big fan of VR, but like some of the early like display, low persistence display, like driver boards were mine, and we were sharing those between the AR and VR effort. We made this amazing direct retinal scanner, which is in conjunction with some of the work I was doing to like synchronize lasers out of these like laser projectors to the video cards so that we could race the beam down and do reprojection and render one scan line before the pixel showed up. And then the optics guy made this really amazing thing. We called it the telescope. It was this optical assembly to get the light into your eyes, and you could hold it. And we had like a medical, like high-speed tracking system. It was absolutely the best display I've ever seen because it had zero persistence. You could move it as fast as you want, and it was just scanning the RGB laser right onto your retina. And it was in focus all over, through all the correct depths. So there was none of like right now in VR. There's like this, everything's fixed focus, so it just doesn't quite feel right. Like frame rate doesn't fix it. The resolution doesn't fix it because it's just fixed focus. That solved that problem. I mean, there's a lot of cool things. I mean, my patent portfolio from there was just fantastic. I mean, I kind of wish I had some of the patents and things I invented there. Like I put together like way before, like I recognized this focus problem was an issue. So like one of the patents that was just issued recently, these things take like 5 or 6 years, was a pixel by pixel variable focus system. So you could take regions of the screen and change the focus of it so that it's like in correct focus. Like if something's up close to you, it would be focused correctly.
I just reported on that. Yeah. That just came out. That was just published. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like the a kind of similar technique for the Half Dome 3 is like kind of loosely based on some of the same stuff that my prototypes were based on. But no, I mean, as far as like everything, I mean, we were a pretty big team. Yeah, so I just did bits and pieces.
Yeah, okay. That's I'll accept some of that as truth and some of that is just being humble. It's conversations like this do push forward the idea that there's a lot of wasted potential internally at that office, software and hardware.
I think I think about that a lot, and I think about my company, like how do we avoid like some of the inefficiencies of Valve. I mean, the great thing about Valve is they're sitting on top of a money fountain, and they don't have to be super efficient, and other companies don't have that luxury. So there were a lot of things that had a lot of potential that, this may give you insight into how they think about things there. And I actually literally had these conversations multiple times. So, I'm a product person. I like to put complete products together. And so I always kind of rose to the top of like trying like to get AR as a thing that we were going to do there. So I put these financial projections together and try to pitch them internally, be like, hey, with marketing, Valve's marketing prowess and budget, if we get this distribution in place, we could have a $200 million first year, like just with, it'd be amazing, wouldn't it? And then I would get responses like, that's $0 billions of dollars. Like that's kind of how they think about it, $0 billions. And I think that's why there's a lot of inefficiencies in some companies like Valve, not to pick on Valve. It's just like, you have to be able to position it to the money people that there's going to be enough upside, or that it's somehow making the Steam more defensible in some way. And so I was completely failing in convincing people that VR was not going to really be a mass market product, that AR was the more likely candidate. And so then there was this whole huge riff, and like, the VR folks headed by Abrash just lobbied to have the whole AR team pushed out. I mean, that's the reality of it. Like, there's a lot of denial about it, but I know who was behind it.
That's exactly what happened. Yeah.
And then they jumped ship a few months later and got a huge payout at Facebook, which pissed me off. Like, I mean, I was rooting for Valve as they brought out the Vive, because I'm like, yeah, you show Facebook, because those folks were treacherous and systematically got a lot of people fired that were super valuable around. And it continued after I left too. I mean, other great engineers were pushed out.
There's an excellent book called The History of the Future.
Oh yeah, I read it.
Yeah, it's great, but it's also very Facebook sided. Abrash is a snake. And I'm not, that's my quote. I have publicly said that a few times. I see that an issue that I see a lot. So you said that you were pushing financial stuff to be able to try and sell AR to the top, be able to productize it. I have never seen Valve, even now, they have the index out, the knuckles are out, they're about to ship like a flagship software title. I assure you there will be very little, if any, traditional marketing on their side. Yeah. Because like the index is out, but unless you're on Steam, you're not going to see it. You're not going to know about it. They rely on third parties like myself to be able to like generate these communities and things like that. So, you know, Abrash pushing AR out so that they had the better foothold, so that they could lie to Zuckerberg that, you know, like Palmer Luckey showing Zuckerberg the Valve Room demo in order to be able to sell Oculus. Yeah.
I mean, there might be, you know, blowback for me talking about this, but, you know, I was on the camp and there was like a large portion of us that were pissed off that Abrash was pitching our technology over the fence to Oculus, because we were given the mission of making a profitable hardware product, and we were just giving it away to Oculus. And at the time, Oculus, we didn't know that they were going to jump to Facebook, but you know, it was positioned inside the company that it promoted Steam. Even if they succeed, they would certainly have to run on Steam. You know, first thing they do is they get to Facebook, they try to close down the platform and isolate and edge out Steam, which, I mean, all of us on the side that are like, what are we doing giving all this technology to an external party? You know, we're like cautioning against. But later they had to, like, because they couldn't get any traction, they had to backpedal and open it back up to Steam. Now Quest is completely closed. It's like, you know, you need to control your destiny. And that's what I was trying to pitch internally at Valve. Is like, if this is really a threat that Steam might go away someday, like ruthlessly, you have to like, you know, keep it internal. And
that's more of a threat.
And I mean, I mean, look at HTC. I mean, I have no insight anymore what Valve is thinking about HTC, but it seems like HTC is going through the same steps of edging out Steam and making their own closed platform, and that doesn't really advance Steam, which is not the mission we were given.
Gabe Newell is a very fickle man. He likes.
I actually like Gabe a lot.
Everybody likes Gabe, but as a businessman or a business person, excuse me, he is very. He likes his knives. He's got celiac disease now, and he's very distracted with personal issues. So he's just not on the top of his game anymore. And he's you know, I'm sure you have many stories about the positives of him, but
no. Well, the thing that I appreciate about Gabe is, and I mean, like I said earlier, like some people think he's a bully, but he has a very blunt way about him, and I really appreciated that, because I came from the toys industry prior, where I worked with a lot of like really intense, blunt people, where in the toy industry, like you have 1 or 2 years to have, you know, if you have 1 or 2 bad years, you're screwed in the toy industry. Like you become irrelevant. And so people that gravitate to leadership in the toy industry are very blunt and very demanding. And I saw those same traits in Gabe. And so he would come in and like, hey, Gabe, try this AR demo. And he'd be like, I don't know, he would say something like, yeah, this kind of sucks. Call me when you have something better. And I always appreciated that. At least you knew where you stood with him, you know. And I mean, he just came by our office a few days ago, and I won't repeat what he said exactly, but it was, you know, you can kind of, if you saw the video of his endorsement that he gave for us, he was very surprised. And as he walked in the door, he was very blunt about how he wasn't expecting much. And then we exceeded that. But
yeah,
But I didn't take offense by it. Like some of the other folks in the office, I think were kind of like looking around like, what the fuck's going on here? And I was just, it was really cool. I felt like I was right back at Valve. We were just having super candid, like in your face conversations about the future.
It's nice.
But yeah.
Yeah. It seems like he maybe is a little ADHD about things where like he gets very excited about something, but then something else happens and he gets very excited about that thing. Right now it's brain interfacing and living forever and all that.
We spend like 20-30 minutes talking about brain interfaces. Yeah. So yeah, it's like I have my near-term, long-term thoughts, and we're not in alignment with that, but it's okay. I'm more of a practical product person.
Yeah. I'm friends with
I could see.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh yeah, I could see why, he's got his health issues or whatever that's publicly out there. It's like why he would be a little more bullish on brain interfaces than I would be. Yeah.
I'm good friends with his son, and I hear I hear a lot of candid, like fun stories about him through like personal life and all that. Like he loves IHOP chicken soup and like all this crazy stupid stuff. But I heard a lot about his brain interfacing ideas and where he wants it to go, and it seems kind of more sci-fi than I mean, maybe like there's some secret internal development prototype at Valve that seems like it can't exist in reality, but that's stuff.
Well, I think that the brain interface stuff is, maybe you can drill a hole in someone's skull and sewing machine in sensors today or even like really soon. I think the thing that a lot of people miss, and maybe even Gabe's missing this, is the users never jump on to this emerging tech without like baby steps. And, like at Till 5, our AR system is a baby step type AR system. It's not the boil the ocean magic leap headset, which, as we all know, kind of face planted when it came out because like it's too much. Like it's not doing one thing great. It's doing a bunch of things kind of meh. And I think brain interfaces are a lot like that too. Like, you got to warm up the world to it and the users, and then slowly brain interfaces. My God, those are going to take decades and decades and decades, especially if you're going to have to drill into people's skulls to do it.
Trying to live forever in the Matrix is just, it's nuts. But
I got a great Gabe stories, man. Gabe was right in, like Gabe rolls his desk to where he wants to emphasize the company to go. And that's pretty much how he rules the roost there, is like if Gabe's in the hardware lab, like then, everyone slightly focuses more on the hardware lab. So he was always down there. And, one time he has a yoga ball that he sits on, and he had this pump sitting there. And so we always like to subtly play jokes on Gabe.
Oh boy.
And so he had this pump, and it looked like the lever to a dynamite blowing up thing. Yeah. And so we made fake dynamite sticks, and we hooked it up to his pump thing. I think that was the one time that we came back. It was sitting on his desk with a knife jammed through the sticks of dynamite. Another time is we kept putting balloonicorns like all over his desk. They had these big inflatable balloonicorns, and he would just throw it off to the side. Then finally one day we came in, and there was like, one of his big machetes like jammed through the balloonicorn.
Oh, God. Yeah. It's always a little scary when a guy has that many knives, I guess. Moving to more today's stuff.
Sure.
So for a person whose entire experience with augmented reality right now is the crappy option on Pokemon Go, what would you say is the best elevator pitch line for specifically Tilt 5 for one of those people?
Yeah, so what we're doing with augmented reality is we're taking the things that you love about tabletop games and the things you love about board games, and we're blending those together. And we're free for video game players. That means we're freeing you from the screen. So screens are great. We love kicking back on the couch, but and playing on a screen. But when you want to like play head to head or cooperatively with your friends, you really would rather just sit around the table and like see their eyes and interact directly with these freaking holograms popping up out of the table. For the board game enthusiasts, like there's so many benefits for video games that are just completely missing. Like your friends can't come over, you can't play the game. So what we're providing is you take your game board, you link it with your friend's game board, and you can play a board game at any point. Or if you get one of these complicated Euro style games, like you either have to read like a 100-page manual and try to memorize the rules, or use our system where there could be tutorials and lots of guidance to help you learn the rules really quick. And there's just so many things you can do when you start blurring the lines between video games, pure video games, and board games, and then all of those like personal connections that you can have with people around the table, or even personal connections around the table over distance. And so that's why our system's really resonating with people. I think we've really distilled it down to some real utility that gamers are going to like.
So does this have this? It seems very not complicated in terms of like practicality, but the mechanics of it obviously have to be incredibly complicated. Does it plug into a computer to work? Is it?
It does.
So what are the system requirements for it?
So just like any video game, you can have Half-Life 3, and it's going to need the biggest, baddest video card, and you can certainly get games for our system that needs like big video cards. But honestly, a lot of our experiences, like Tabletopia is one of our partners, has 800 licensed tabletop games. That's not going to take a huge PC. Like my demo system that I take on the road to show is just this kind of crappy Dell that has Intel graphics in it, and I can run multiple headsets off of one. The reason, like for the nerd listeners, the reason we can do that is we've innovated a lot on the way the tracking is done. So instead of brute forcing things and doing asynchronous time warp or whatever the latest buzzword is from VR folks, we're doing that all in the headset. So we have a reprojection engine that takes your head position and all your sensors and takes the video from your game, which could be anywhere from 15 frames to 100 frames per second, and then upscales it to 180 frames per second, and then reprojects it onto the game board. So no matter, if your game bogs down because there's a complex scene, you still get a smooth, locked experience. In comparison to VR, which all the VR systems right now, just you have to have a big, badass PC to make it work. And only in the last couple of years has there been chips capable of doing this in the headset. And, I was talking about this at Valve. I'm like, someday this is how all VR and AR systems are going to work. And we just didn't have any way to make it happen until now. And so, even some of our patents are around this. So I'm glad that we got there first. Suckers.
Good for you. So that's amazing. So if you're able to run it off of Intel graphics, then it's just like what? It's just like a crazy FPGA doing all the reprojection, or is it your own custom circuitry, or?
It's kind of this hybrid that's between FPGA and DSP that does, it's a little more compute than an FPGA and cheaper. That was the important thing, because our system's $299 for the base kit, and we could have done it years ago with like a big honkin' FPGA up there, but they would have cost us like $100 or $200 for the chip. So now we can do it for a consumer price point. And everything comes over USB-C. So, or USB super speed for PC users that don't have USB-C. And so we've gotten rid of vertical sync. So vertical sync doesn't really matter anymore. Like
what?
Vertical sync came about because television sets 100 years ago needed a vertical sync to send pixels one at a time, and they all came in perfect lockstep. And if you missed your vertical sync, you have to wait for an entire frame before you could send the pixel again. And it's just this old legacy thing. So now, since we have a vertical sync for this 180 frames per second, right? But we really don't care when the picture comes, because we're constantly interpolating the correct position on the table. And feeding that in real time out to the projectors. So when the game engine is done with its picture, it just sends it over USB. So if it's like 1 nanosecond slower than normally a VSync, on a VR system, you would just have a bad user experience. on our system, it's like, yeah, we're just a nanosecond late. Who cares? Send the picture anyway. And so that makes it a lot easier for to give a good user experience without having big, beefy graphics. But then again, like if you're doing some super fancy game, like you don't want to be running 1 frame per second. Your animation would look like crap.
Yeah.
So that's the difference that you see. So the image will look locked and smooth, but if your frame rate drops, it's going to be like playing on any video game where the frame rate gets a little chunky.
So I think your quote in the interview was, I'm going to read it here. You were ready to tear Gabe a new asshole, but when you went up to the room, you were kind of weepy, and you had demanded that they either fund the AR research or that you got to take it. And because of a lawyer in the room, Gabe allowed you to be able to take the AR research that you were doing at Valve. And that turned into Cast AR at first, and now it's Tilt 5. What would you say between the research that you had done, let's say 2013, 2014 versus now? How much of that original project has survived, and what were the differences in the user experience between those 2 iterations, then versus now?
Yeah. I should start with the story of Gabe because that's interesting. I mean, memories will fade, as lawyers tell you. But as I recall it, and I don't know what interview this is. Who knows? I may have slipped up, but it was the weirdest layoff I've ever seen in my life. I've been on both sides of the fence before at previous companies, but I show up to work. Everyone knows that there's this big layoff, and I found out that our mechanical engineer was getting laid off, and I was pissed off. And I go charging upstairs because someone in the lobby told me that my mechanical engineer working on my project was fired. And I come charging into the hardware lab, and they're like, "Jeri, you're fired too." I'm like, "What?" I'm like, how could this be? Gabe just stood me up at the Valve Hawaii picnic like months before, said I was the most. He literally had me stand up and say I was the most valuable hire that they've ever made at Valve. It was like unbelievable that, my head was on the chopping block. But they were one by one pulling us into like these rooms and letting us go. And so I had to sit there for like 5 hours waiting to be let go. And I knew. And so tons of people streaming by, like saying like, "I can't believe this is happening. This is unbelievable. You brought like this amazing, like, class to the company and stuff." I'm like, I don't know. It's so weird. And so I was like, I was going to go chew them out. That was what I was like. And my coworkers and people that were remaining at the company and people that were getting let go too were like, "You go chew them out." Right? I'm going to go chew them out. And so I go walking in the door when it was my time. Valve has this rule, like if you hire someone in and they don't work out, you let them go. And so I guess Gabe was the one to let me go. And so I go charging in. I'm like, "Gabe, so this is it, huh?" Like I'm like really super aggressive. And that lasts for like 5 seconds. And then I start getting like teary eyed. "I can't believe you're doing this. Oh my God, I'm so bought into what you wanted me to do." Oh. And then just as I don't know, the conversation went all over the place. The stupid lawyer was like, trying to tell me my rights or something. I don't know. I ignored it. And then in the very end, as I was walking out, I'm like, "Gabe, you should just give me that technology I was working on." And he's like, "Okay." Gabe's kind of, that's the way Gabe is. And so like $100 and a bunch of lawyers later, we got it. So back to your initial question.
Yeah.
The only thing that survived from Valve was the use of retroreflective film to create the image. Pretty much everything else has changed since. Everything from the way we did projection to the way we tracked the game board or tracked the world. So there's very little difference. But there were key concepts. Like, I'm going to go rewind a little bit. So the Oculus guys are coming through. Carmack comes through. And I was always... I was always given the task of like doing the demos because the AR demo was always super popular because we had people just hanging out playing the AR demo all the time. So Carmack comes through. I show him some VR stuff, introduce him to the VR folks. We show him like game controllers and stuff, and then we go to the AR thing, and I put all the initial wands together, and I was the biggest proponent of wands. I'm like, wands are how you're going to interact. And Carmack comes through, and he's like, no one's going to want any kind of 6 degrees of freedom. People are just going to sit on the couch, and they're just going to use Xbox controllers. And so Abrash and Carmack are buddies, and so Abrash is walking through, then all of a sudden there was like this huge like friction about anything to do with wands at that point. Okay, anyway, I get fired. Boom. I'm like, I'm still a believer. Wands are the way that you're going to interact in 3D space. And so Cast AR, we did wands. The HTC Vive comes out with wands, and Oculus ships with Xbox controllers. I'm like, middle finger, thank you, Valve, go Valve.
Yeah.
Like, and of course, this time people have back-channeled how like treacherous and traitorous, the Abrash crew was, and how they just undermined the project. And so I've always been a Valve fan, especially around their VR stuff.
Not to change topics on that too much. I did this fairly long form report on Abrash's history with the company. There's evidence to suggest that Valve wouldn't exist if Abrash didn't help Gabe Newell and Mike Harrington out back in the 90s. Yeah. But there's also evidence.
That's the lore inside the company, and I believe it to be true.
No, it is. Yeah. Apparently nobody gave him the time of day at id, from what I've heard. Problem is, I've heard many people retroactively state that the layoffs of 2013 were the biggest mistake Valve has ever made.
I would say so, but I'm biased.
Well, I understand. Yeah, you were a part of that.
Such great stuff.
But not only, like, I've heard that not only were they firing hardware engineers, they were firing software people and art. Like, it was a bunch of layoffs. And from what I've heard, it was because Abrash had kind of helped Gabe come up with an idea of like restructuring certain things, pushing the product mentality of virtual reality forward. And it seems like that was all for the Facebook acquisition, and that this was a plan from the beginning. I don't want to push you towards a conspiracy or anything. However, the question I do have is...
I just have to say, I have to question that myself.
Yeah.
Like at what point did he have a deal in place?
If your recollection of that day, did you hear that there were, because I haven't been able to get a solid answer on this, was it just the hardware team, or did you know that it like people on completely separate software projects were getting laid off as well?
Oh, it was across the company.
Yeah, that's what I was hearing.
Yeah, it wasn't just hardware at all. Hardware got all the attention just because of a tweet that I did. I was just like, yep, got fired today, or something like that. And I showed a picture of all my pinball machines that I had like folded the head boxes down so that no one could play them. It's like, if you're going to fire, my pinball machines, I'm a pinball collector.
Yeah.
I had pinball machines all over Valve, and people just, I love pinball. I'm like, fuck you guys. You can't play. Correction. The one pinball machine I left up and going was Hard Body, which is a weightlifting one that had like this female bodybuilder, and people were offended by, that machine.
Why?
For whatever reason. I left that one up, so everyone had to play Hard Body.
So completely separate question then. I've heard a lot about your love of pinball. With your current system, does virtual pinball work in augmented reality at all?
Oh yeah, it's awesome. I actually prototyped this myself. There's some really fantastic like pinball construction sets on the Unity Asset Store, and so I put pinball machines together. It feels really, really good.
Cool.
We will have pinball on our system, and it is good. It is good.
I figured. Okay, cool.
It's the closest I felt to like having a real pinball experience without having the whole machine. I was surprised. I played on monitors, and it's just not the same. But this had the feel, which was awesome.
Are the constraints of this system like, do you have to have a certain type of dimension of table, or could you use like a longer table to simulate more of a pinball?
Oh, in our Kickstarter, we have a square game board and we have a
Mm.
rectangular game board that has like a little kickstand, so you can have a lot of vertical height.
Mm.
And so there's really no limits on it. Although we did limit our Kickstarter to just make it easy for our end users. So there's only 2 targets, so the square and the rectangular. And our thoughts behind that is like the square is really nice for coffee tables that are kind of rectangular in your living room. And you can have your beer and pizza and chips and stuff off to the side. And the rectangular one is great for the RPG players and the folks that want to really maximize their experience, and you have like a kitchen table to play on. Turns out the game board, everyone, like back in the VR days when, you know, people weren't even, you know, putting any attention towards AR, people are like, well, why would I like have a game board? It's like silly and like I don't understand, and you know, why don't you just do it without the game board? And now that, you know, everyone's experienced VR, and you know, it's great for a lot of things, not great for others. And a lot of people have tried all the other AR systems that have like itty bitty field of view or like blurry giant head crabby. We actually called the AR prototype the head crab, by the way.
Cool.
Now people appreciate it, and so the entire time I've always been proud of the game board. It's like it's genius. It like solves so many problems. Everything's in focus. Like it gives you like super high contrast, so the image is like got deep blacks, and like it's great. And like embrace it. Like you can't play AR on a table unless it's clean anyway. So why don't just flip out a game board and have an even better experience with like a perfect background?
Cool.
So that's the cleverness of our system is, you know, at Valve, we had waveguides. We had all of this stuff way before Magic Leap or HoloLens even came out. And we were prototyping. It cost us ungodly amounts of money. And we knew the limitations. And so that's why I got super excited about it. It's like, hey, this is how you make a few $100 headset that puts freaking magic on your table that, you know, anyone can approach and use. And everyone makes fun of our wand, too. So they're like, looks like a barbecue lighter. You're so stupid. And like, I'm like, that's not an accident. Like, we aren't stupid. It's like everyone since the time you were 4 years old know how to pick up a stick and poke things, right? You know, so that's why we made it the shape. And everyone knows how to use a barbecue lighter and pull the trigger, or a hot glue gun, or a gun even. It's like, I can hand this to grandma and grandpa and they can, you know, poke a game character, pull the trigger, lift it up and move it. And it's like 0 learning curve. Yeah. That's just my background. It's like working in the toy industry. It's just like your experience has to be like 0 instructions to use it. And so that's what we've achieved. It's just like flip the game board open, slip the glasses on, and start poking things.
I've had some problems as a pretty big VR fan trying to get someone like my own grandmother to understand it. However, AR seems significantly easier to be able to sell to somebody like my 93-year-old grandmother.
Yeah.
I've personally not been able to try anything either from Cast AR in the past or from Tilt 5. Yeah, I mean, you can't really get out of Ohio when you're here, so, you know. Yeah, I mean, so the report that I'm planning on doing will be covering a bit more than just Tilt 5 because other things do exist. But I'm going to be focusing on Tilt 5 because personally I am a video game fan. This is the industry I care about. So, you know, being able to have a product that's laser focused on a specific industry, a specific practical use, is a lot easier for me to be able to sell to myself and also sell to my my audience or community or whatever.
You asked what's changed since I left Valve. Like, what's interesting is Cast AR, things went horribly wrong with Cast AR, and that's a whole story. But the thing that's changed the most is, I think, the laser focus. So at Valve, there's, and I think it started at Valve, is like there's this notion that you've got to be like huge and grand and big, and I was presenting something a little smaller. And so I was always trying to like pump it up bigger than it was. And then so we did Cast AR. We did quite well with Cast AR. We had great momentum. And then as things happen in Silicon Valley, like investors want you to go off in different directions, and they try to sell you to Facebook and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And ultimately the company crashed and burned. But as our core team got back together and like, hey, we can buy all these patents and technology and we can do it right this time. We spent months and months just talking about like, how are we going to do it right? And like, if we didn't make all the mistakes in the past, what would we do different? And we were looking at also the mistakes of all the other companies. Like, how did Magic Leap go wrong? How did HoloLens go wrong? How did Google Glass go wrong? And there was a common thread, and the common thread was overselling, overpromising. You know, Google Glass, like when it came out, the promo video showed someone learning ukulele, you know, with their Google Glass, which was impossible. Magic Leap showed whales jumping out of the floor. You know, HoloLens showed Minecraft, and that families would be sitting around the table playing Minecraft together. And we're like, no, this time, like, it may destroy us or it may make us like take off like a rocket, but we're going to like have a clean, clear message and ignore everything else besides that message. And that was this best of video games, best of tabletop games mashed together. And I think it worked beautifully. We've outsold Oculus, their Kickstarter. We sold more units.
Cool.
Reporters picked up on that, and they did some research, found out we've outsold Magic Leap. Of course, they've shipped infinitely more units than we have so far, but it's a different story. We're the largest ever AR project on Kickstarter, which is fantastic. Like, and the response we got from people like, thank you, finally. Like, someone is just like picking one thing and like optimizing for that. And then the kind of fallout of that is that all the other like vertical markets that we could have talked about, like we could have made a Kickstarter video like, you know, this is great at medical imaging, this is great at data visualization, this is great at video games. And it would have been like the world's most confusing Kickstarter video. Those people all just figured it out on their own. And so I would guess like probably a third of our units that we sold are going into non-gaming like applications. Cool. Yeah. And so I think we'll probably see a lot more of that in the AR space, because the hype is over on VR and AR. VR keeps kind of falling a little flat. AR never had quite the same hype, but now we're that long tail. There's a Gartner hype cycle that all emerging technology goes through. Starts off with like super hype, and there's lots of acquisitions and mergers. At that point, Oculus gets acquired by Facebook, and then you go into the trough of disillusionment, which is the bottom side, where people are like, it's never going to come, it's never going to come. And then there's this long tail that goes out, and that's when like growth happens and real value for the end user comes. And I think we're in that long tail where in the next 5 to 10 years, like we're going to see AR come of age. And sorry, I'm getting all preachy.
No, it's okay. That's fine. I it's sometimes hard to believe in products when the people behind them don't seem to believe in them. And that's always been a big issue with, you know, with anybody. But obviously you have, like 6-7 years on AR now, and I think there's very few people in the world that understand the technologies as much as you. So
and on the same piece of tech too. Like, I mean, the number of times I had to stop and question myself, like, am I insane to keep pushing on this projection AR thing? Like, everyone's telling me I'm insane, but it seems to have all the right dimensions for a great product, and I can't see those same like attributes in any of the other systems. Like, I'm insane.
It's funny, Valve just failed with a tabletop game, a virtual one. So, I mean, with the success...
But yet, Autodesk is like...
No, I know, but you know what I'm talking about.
Right?
Yeah. However, if that were to come out on your system, that is significantly more... I don't know what the word is. Compelling, to be able to sell to a person. Yeah. And if Gabe likes it, you know, once the flagship VR title, which by the way, Gabe's actually working hands-on programming a game right now. Once that's out, you might be getting some emails about, oh, let's relaunch Artifact on whatever, you know.
I would work with Valve in a heartbeat. I think that, typically they try to do the right thing.
Yes.
Typically.
Brandon Reinhardt, email him if that's something that you would want to do. I kind of want to see that happen so bad. Brandon Reinhardt, yeah.
There was this notion in the company, and it was the employees that were spreading this and telling me this when I started working there. There was like this belief that Valve is unable to make their own like games, like Half-Life 2, because the DNA is kind of like gone. Like you've got Steam bringing in 99.9% of the money, and there's this zero billions dollars thing that is kind of like part of the company culture. And games are so grindy, and it's so comfortable, just taking money from Steam, that the only way to get a game like shipped at Valve is to purchase tried and true gameplay from an external company, and then give it the Valve polish and push it out. So Portal, Left 4 Dead, Dota, and the list goes on and on. CS:GO was an external company built that.
Yeah.
And so it's really hard to get anything going in Valve game-wise.
Well, that's... as the only person that's ever tried to deny that statement for like a decade now, that's finally changing to an extent. Valve had 2 sucker punches in like a month. You had Artifact, and then literally 2 weeks after Artifact, you had Epic going, oh, by the way, so things are a bit different nowadays. They're really pushing for VR.
Have competition. Like whenever you end up in a marketplace where there's no competition, then, in particular, and I definitely saw this in Valve, is you get into your own distortion bubble. And it happened with Atari back in the day. Like I know Nolan Bushnell and Al Alcorn, some of these folks, and they're like, you end up with a company so successful that they can just release a turd and it brings in $1 billion. It was probably hundreds of millions for Atari back in the day. And there's like, anything we do is brilliant, and we don't have to think about it too much. And then all of a sudden, before you know it, like competition comes in and you have to either adapt or die. So hopefully for Valve, this is an adapt moment for them.
It sure seems like it. Yeah, I could go on for far too long about the intricacies of how they've been changing, but it was definitely a distortion bubble in there. It's like, and it kind of goes back to like, oh, go talk to Brandon about gameplay. He knows everything about gameplay, and it's like, he was the one in charge of Artifact, unfortunately. So love the guy,
Yeah, I mean, we're at Till 5. We're super excited about some of the other franchises out there, like Yu-Gi-Oh. Oh my God, like I would give anything to get Yu-Gi-Oh on our system, because they already have all the mind share, right? But I mean, it could be Artifact if, hey, Gabe, come talk to me again.
Yeah, I mean, I've found that they're never going to be very proactive about anything like that. But if somebody approaches them like, here is what I want to do, here is how I will do it, and try and like minimize the amount of effort that Gabe needs to do it in the first place, then usually he's like, all right, Yeah,
I mean, that's how Valve works. And it's actually, I felt bad for a lot of small entities that would approach us, because since Valve doesn't have a, any leader that's really like mandating things happening in the company, like you could approach me as an employee of the hardware lab and say like, I want to do Half-Life 3 and I want to do it external, and be like, sounds great, let's just start doing that. And I'm unilaterally kind of like spinning you up as an external company, and then all of a sudden like someone else in the company gets wind and there's like an uprising, and it's like, oops, just kidding, we're not doing Half-Life 3 externally. But I saw that happening all over the place. So for small entities approaching Valve, you've got to be very, very careful and make sure that you're approaching at the right level, or you might be talking to someone in the mailroom telling you make Half-Life 3.
They're definitely looking for ways to be able to salvage the Artifact license, so I actually think there's a lot of
Sweet.
Something there. And same goes for auto chess. I mean, Underlords or whatever. I could imagine that's the first thing I thought of when I saw the trailer and like monsters started popping up out of the table. I'm like, oh shit, that would be amazing.
Yeah, they had it and they tossed it away a few years ago.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's the most agonizing thing for me is like we could have doubled down on this. And so the Steam box, I had strong opinions about not launching the Steam box the way it was going to be launched. I'm like, we have no proof points in the industry of a console ever being shipped without like a compelling hook. You know, is that going to be Half-Life 3? Is that going to be VR? Is that going to be AR? And so I was pitching hard, like, you know, don't outsource it to HP or, you know, Alienware to make these things. We got to build it ourselves. We got to subsidize it, and we got to hook something like Tilt 5 up to it to make it so compelling and so different than what anyone else is doing in the industry that, you know, people are going to rush out and grab it. And unfortunately, it just got shipped as like a way to play Linux games. And I could have saw it coming a mile away that it was going to be kind of a fizzle. And then without and there were no proof points of any kind of gaming system out there that had like 3 different tiers. Like it came out with multiple tiers, like wimpy, kind of wimpy, and sort of wimpy.
Okay. Yeah.
I don't And so not a surprise that actually I take that back. We talked about this a lot. There was a really good case study of why not to ship it the way they did. It was 3DO. So if you don't know the 3DO story, look it up. It's kind of a mirror image of what Valve did. It's like they expected other companies who need to make a lot of margin on hardware to sell this thing. So which means that the hardware is going to be pretty damn expensive. And how are you going to compete against Xbox that's selling the thing at a loss? I mean, we're seeing that with the Quest right now. The Quest, I guarantee you, is at a loss. I know how much electronics goes into that and how much optics and stuff. It's a loss. And they're just doing that to get market share. And, you know, Valve is selling theirs at their cost. And
the thing about the Quest that I find funny is that they're like, it's a closed source. It's a closed garden. It's a walled garden. But then they catch winds that, oh, Valve's about to announce, because they're doing this thing where they're going to go, oh, new Half-Life game out in 3 months, so that everybody rushes and buys their hardware. And Facebook's like, okay, here's a cable. You can plug your Quest into the computer so you can... So I don't even know what they're trying to do anymore with that. But
well, I mean, Facebook's long-term goal is to make AR glasses that people wear all the time, and they're going to read your emotions, and they're going to digitize your whole world, and they're going to understand everything that you like and dislike, and they're going to be able to use that data to sell advertising to you at your weakest. It's absolutely clear. I mean, that's why they're putting all their effort into long-term into AR, and they're putting so much money into it. It's like the most frightening thing I've ever seen in my life. And this VR thing is just kind of like the baby steps to get there, you know, and get people used to their platform. It's really, really is frightening, because at Valve, we were reading people's emotions like with super high accuracy, just with very few sensors. And so can you imagine if your entire life is digitized and uploaded to Facebook, like horrible, horrible stuff's going to happen. Not a fan.
Yeah. I understand that you are very busy, and we've just hit an hour, so I don't want to take up too much more of your time.
Amy, did you push out that meeting?
I'm pushing out.
Okay. I have more time if you want.
Oh, cool. I did want to get your opinion of this DigiNews report of manufacturers claiming, manufacturers saying that there's AR being manufactured, prototyped AR being manufactured at scale for Apple computers that has been developed in conjunction with Valve. I can't source that, because if that's the case, then that's going to be some of the tightest lipped stuff at Valve right now. But if that is the case, what are your thoughts?
I have no insight. I have no way to know if it's true or not. But it goes back to, why would Valve do it? I mean, when I saw the same news, I'm like, why would Valve do that? Like, Apple's a closed platform. It doesn't promote Steam. 99.9% of Valve's money comes from Steam. So unless people can tie a connection between Steam and Apple's closed platform, I don't see it happening. I mean, there's just no incentive for Valve to do it. I don't buy it.
I don't buy it either. There were some hardware people in February that were fired publicly that now all work at Apple, every single one of them. I
talked to a bunch of those people. Yeah. I think I would have probably gotten some indication of.
Okay. All right, cool. It seems out of character. However, I'm not going to get into the nitty gritty of it because I'll sound like a crazy person.
No, follow the money. I mean, that's the boogeyman's been around the corner for us with AR for a long time, right? Mm-hmm. Ever since I left Valve, Google was going to eat our lunch, HoloLens was going to eat our lunch, and physics is hard. You can't bypass physics. And then the second thing is always follow the money. Like where's the revenue stream? And it doesn't add up, right? Yeah. Like the Facebook thing. I know that to be true. Like those rumors about what they're doing, trying to read people's minds and digitize their world is true. You follow the money. It's like true. It's absolutely true. That must be their grand mission. This thing with Apple, it's just like any other FUD out there. Who knows? It could actually be like, some kind of clever marketing on the manufacturer's side, Apple side. Who knows? Like,
I usually get some kind of refuting from somebody that listens or whatever, and I haven't actually had anybody go like, "Oh, by the way, no on that one." But I'm trying to look at that as
amazing if something like that could have been done in secret or so. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Tim Cook seems very interested in doing AR. I mean, I believe that Apple's working on something
AR related. Absolutely. It's not a secret down here. And as far as I can tell, just from chatter in the Valley, that there's at least 3 efforts inside of Apple. That's just rumor on the street, but they're really good at keeping things like secret.
Oh, of course. Oh, yeah.
I mean, rumor I hear is like there's, information display, which makes a lot of sense. Like I believe that could happen. And then there's like 2 other projects, which are the more immersive type projects. I thought it was funny. There's an online celebrity that's always like very Apple fanboyish. And, supposedly Apple was going to announce in September. I was like, I'll bet you $1,000 they're not. I'll bet you. He's like, well, I don't know. I'm like, well, how about just $100? He's like, okay. And sure enough, no announcement. I'm like, hey, where's my $100? He's like, well, the problem is, this is just the technical side of why we're not going to see immersive AR like anytime soon. And in Dream AR is thermally, electrically, you can't put that much compute into a headset. If you try to do it wirelessly to your iPhone, you're still suffering from all that data communication. So you have to put a pretty freaking big battery in there to do it. So there's a lot of like on the compute side does not add up yet. And then on top of that, you have to have tracking cameras and depth sensors and different stuff in the headset. And, thermally, electrically, all those numbers don't add up if you actually start computing how much horsepower you need in the headset. So immersive, transmissive AR glasses, I don't think are coming from Apple anytime soon. Now, then there's the World Combiner. That's the absolute most difficult part of this whole thing is trying to overlay the image into the world. And so Magic Leap, HoloLens, was it not Sony? Was it? There's another one that just released a 40-degree field of view HoloLens clone, one of the big companies. Like if all these big companies are releasing 40-degree field of view waveguide systems, there's no one has found a magic way to get around the refractive index of the glass and bend light any faster than 40 degrees. I thought it was quite funny when the HoloLens 2 came out. They're like, we doubled the area, which is not really expanding the field of view very much. I mean, that's what makes our system beautiful, is like 110-degree field of view. And if we wanted to expand that to bigger, we could, because we've turned the optics inside out. We're not trying to rely on total internal reflection of exotic materials to get light into your eye. And I just don't believe Apple's found any silver bullet. I don't think Facebook has. I don't think any of them have, because it's physics. And then how do you solve the compute part of it?
It's likely just prototyping, and if Valve was to work with Apple, that partnership would fall through anyways. So,
No comment.
Yeah, sure. All right.
I mean, you could imagine a scenario where Apple has failed to get desktop users, and maybe there's some kind of collaboration there that Steam could exist, but it seems like such a stretch. Like, yeah. Well,
I mean, they just got in this huge argument anyways, and Gray told me about this really awkward dinner conversation he had with Gabe, Gray being the kid, where Apple had denied Steam Link on the iPad for like 8 months, even though the app was ready, and Gabe was like, just fucking, I can't believe, he was like just screaming pissed at a restaurant. So I don't believe it either, but I've been talking around, and it's like, it might just be like how you said, how one person can just be like, oh, you want to do what? Okay, cool. But then like they get higher up and they're like, oh no, never mind, go away. Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of rumors floating around the valley about Apple doing a VR type headset, maybe with some like video pass through, but I find that so hard. Like, Apple has this bar for their products, that video pass through VR, which is a terrible experience, by the way. Like,
it is.
We tried at Valve to solve that, and there's just no solution to it. And I just don't see like that kind of thing making it through all the hoops you have to make it through at Apple, because they're all about like the best user experience with the best brushed aluminum the money can buy, and then they charge their customers through the nose for it. And that kind of like, even, I mean, the Index is fantastic. Kudos to the Valve guys for making like the world's best VR system, and it's super deluxe and great. But compared to Apple, that thing is a toy. Like, it looks like a toy. Its form factor is a toy. Like, there's no way that kind of product would ship from Apple.
Oh boy. Yeah, and there's some really great, like the audio, Emily Ridgway, shout outs, was the whole idea of it not touching your ears and you still feeling like you're immersed. That's my favorite part of the whole setup. But yeah, you're completely right.
I mean, it's just so funny. These are the different things that we would have these arguments over. It's just like, it's so satisfying that some of these things are actually coming to fruition. It's like our glasses, like there's nothing over your ears, and there's like these huge knockdown drag out fights of like, you can do it without covering your ears, and people are like, it's impossible. It's impossible. Like, no, it really is possible.
There's a complete side question. I have yet to pre-order my kit. Your Kickstarter took place at the same time that I literally moved into this new place. Is it still possible to pre-order through your website? Yeah,
you can. If you go to the Kickstarter page, you can pre-order. You're just going to be behind the Kickstarter people. Okay. So right now, we sold so many units that we're shipping in June, July, August. And so a pre-sale, I would imagine, would be like into August, September, assuming all the stars align and like ships don't sink, or, our mighty leader in Washington doesn't like go to war with China. It's pretty fun. I'm heading to Japan in just a couple days. We're going to work on logistics of like how to get the product like direct injected into these different regions of the world, into the U.S. and North America and into Europe. And it's super exciting. Like, it's been so long getting to this point that we're finally like, someone can pick up a headset now and play with it. And it's like, wow, we just have to fix a few things and not like everything. Like right now I'm like working with mechanical engineers, like the hinges on the arms are supposed to like latch into place, but there was like a pin that was misplaced, so they just fall
Okay.
all closed, and just a boatload of software. That's our biggest challenge at this point, getting the developers up to speed and getting all the content. What's exciting is we got these really awesome platforms. So we've got Fantasy Grounds and Tabletopia, which just brings like thousands of experiences to the system. And then we have all these like really hungry indie developers that are making really cool stuff. Like we have so many announcements to make over the next 8 months of like very innovative stuff that people are playing with, because we put a lot of features in here. Some of them it's going to work out and some's going to fall flat, but
that's awesome. The whole idea of being like, I know the franchise isn't going to work because you're no longer there, but that whole idea where you were talking about the AI director not existing, instead the director is on a table looking down on you for Left 4 Dead.
So
that sounds
fun.
Amazing.
It's going to happen on some game. I'll guarantee you, because I'm going to make damn sure of it. And once we get enough traction and we can get the attention of the big boys, like we'll make that happen. It goes like this. It is like so fun. You're sitting with your friend that's playing on the TV. First thing you do is you drop 1,000 zombies in on them and like kill them right away. And they punch you in the arm, like, stop that. And you're like, ha, 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 that's really fun, you know? And then you start dropping zombies in and you get them to 1 health bar, and then you start dropping health packs in. And then that's when everything gets like super heightened, because they're running from zombies. They got 1 health bar. You're dropping them. They're running right past them. You're like, dude, I'm dropping him. Come on. And they die anyway, or whatever, or they get it. And it's like, you haven't experienced a like game until you like have that kind of cooperative experience. Some of our earliest demos that people would just play for hours is like, we just had this super lame maze game. And had the Left 4 Dead zombies just kind of with really shitty AI, just like kind of following you around. And they only had 3 speeds, like slow, medium, and fast. And you could outrun them even at the fast speed. And we put a flag in the middle. It was capture the flag. The longer you held the flag, the more points you got. But as soon as you grabbed the flag, the zombies would run at you at twice the speed, so you wouldn't survive too long. And but you could have up to 6 players like playing simultaneously. Then we added bullets to it. And so you could ricochet the bullets off the walls, and that was kind of fun. You would kind of like hole up in a corner with your buddies across the table, and these alliances would form like, hey, let's go down to the southern end of the game board and just kind of hang out there. And it was a much bigger map than the actual table, so it scrolled. And you just sit down and you'd be kind of shooting out at different angles, keeping people from like trying to like take over your corner. Oh, 14 minutes.
Okay.
And then we added another feature. We, as in Rick Johnson, did all of this. You could hold the trigger on the wand and you could grow the bullets. They were bigger, and each time they hit the wall, they would shrink one size until they disappeared. And that was super fun. It would bounce, and you could have these like huge jumbo bullets like going down the maze and just like annihilate like 10 people at once, or 4 people at once. And then people found that you could walk up to the wall and you could take one of these super bullets and stick it in the wall, and there was a bug. And then you could walk inside of it. Now you had a little protective shield. And the only way that you could destroy that shield is to like Pied Piper zombies and like drag the zombies over and run them into the shield. And so people would Pied Piper like 20 zombies and bring them down this corner where someone's hole up inside one of their jumbo bullets, and then just let the zombies free in there. It was just so fun because you just sit around and just like all this emerging gameplay would just be so fun.
This is why I hate Valve, because
hate love.
So was all that hate love, sure, was all that built on, so this would have been 2012, that was like pre-Unity being too big. Was this built on Source
1?
Really?
Yep. Source 2 wasn't even available. And I'll tell you what, Source 1, like when we left Valve and we had to migrate away from Source 1, it sucked going to Unity at first. It wasn't very performant for AR, VR. And so I missed all of our Source 1 games. And because we didn't have a license to Source 1, we had to, like all of that was lost. We had a kind of Super Mario style game. We had that zombie maze game. We had like a flying voxel game. We had a pirate ship. Oh yeah, the pirate ship game. That was funny. Multiplayer pirate ship game in voxels. And you would cruise around in your pirate ships and you could only shoot out the side. It was kind of really weird game mechanic. But every time the cannonballs would hit the voxel terrain, it would kind of erode the terrain away. The voxels would break away. So you would like pull up to this island and you would just start shooting a bunch of cannonballs into it until you made like a little alcove that you could back your ship into it and kind of hide inside. And sounds silly, but the games were like insanely fun when you had like 2 or 3 people sitting around the table. We'll see the same types of games emerge.
Yeah,
but
took a long time to get it out from when it was because of friggin' Gabe and everybody getting fired.
Yeah, we would have been out by now, but that's a different story. Yeah. But what's unique about AR and kind of what we're doing in VR, so VR, it's like this insane race to ultimate immersion. Mm-hmm. And what we're doing, you don't need ultimate immersion. You can have super fun Atari 2600 graphics, right? It could just be cubes and voxels, and it's just as much fun as if you have like, fancy, ray traced, graphics. Like the graphics doesn't change having like 4 or 5 people around the table. Oh
man.
Oh, it wasn't worry. We're coming out.
No, I know. I can't wait for like this point next year when like some units are in the hands of people and there are games to play and things. All right. Thank you very much for
sorry it was so super rando, but there's
oh no, it's exactly what I wanted out of this. Yes. It makes the video easier to produce. Is it okay if I send you an early, before I publish the video, is it all right if I send you a copy of it?
Yeah, that would be great. I probably went a little off, Gabe and I, I'm talking again with Gabe, which is fantastic. So
yeah, that's really good.
I don't want to totally piss him off, so try to be a little sensitive.
Yeah, that's fine.
Happy to jump on in the future. I love talking about weirdo drama at Valve. It's like the most weird, unique place I've ever worked. And when it works, it is just like incredibly efficient. And when it doesn't work, it's the most inefficient, horrible thing you can imagine. So it's just bipolar. It's just one way or another. It's like,
oh yeah. If you ever want free press for Tilt 5, tell a Valve story. Because that's I'm not even joking. That's the secret of the games press. If they can put Gordon Freeman on their thumbnail, they're going to talk about whatever it is you're talking about. Yeah. And I've made a living out of that. So, thank you very much. I mean, so much was said in this interview that it is quite valuable. I could edit down. There were a couple times where you said, please off the record with this. I'll cut all that out. But this conversation would work really well, almost as like a pseudo 1-episode podcast. Yeah, you're okay with that.
I mean, do what you want with it. If you want to get back together with like more targeted questions, I'm happy to run through those with you again. It's fun. I like talking about Valve. Like I had a lot of pain because I got let go from there, but I really loved Valve. Like I truly loved working there. And so when we had the Golden Mission,
yeah. I mean, there's a chance
effort to do.
There's a chance where you could be working with them again if that's really something that you want to do.
I could see that happening.
I mean, I don't want to toot my own horn, but I've been doing this for 10 years now, and I know like everybody. So
that's how Valve works. They fire people and then they contract them the week later because they're like, whoops. Yeah. What have you? I mean, that was happening when I was there. They would just randomly fire someone because like someone would lobby to get them fired, and then all of a sudden they're like, whoops, why did you come in and fire our guy that was doing this critical thing?
Yeah, I've been asked that. I've gotten the golden question a few times. That whole send in your resume. You get the send in your resume. That means nothing. But when they ask you, well, what can you do that I can't do? That means that they're interested. I've had that question a few times, but I have no interest in that right now because I'd get fired in like 2 days.
Yeah, I know. There's 2 ways to operate in Valve. There is And a lot of people most people operate this way. Keep your head down
Mm-hmm.
and keep everyone around you very, very happy. And you can make a lot of money that way. Or you can be fortunate enough to be one of the alpha folks, and you can make even more money because their bonus structure favors that. But you've got a lot of targets on your back, as I found out. If you ever want some secrets to getting interviewing at Val, I'll tell you how you get into Val.
Yeah, that's fine. But I have I don't want to take up too much of your
I got to go in 2 minutes.
I have an interview guide. I have every question they've ever asked in every interview up until this point. Cataloged and yeah.
I could give you the insight of like what they were actually looking for, because it's not always apparent. Like there was the Steam Watch, which is, we actually didn't want them to come up with a good Steam Watch, or the keypad entry, or I made most of the hardware questions. So those were all mine.
Oh, you did the construct the elevator question? That's yours?
No, elevator existed before, but we readapted it to hardware. So that was actually a software one. It's actually a great software one and a great hardware one. I did keypad. I did Steam Watch. I did toy organ. What was the one? Those were the ones I did. I actually interviewed the most. There was the first interview. They always start you with one interview, which is kind of a gimme to get you calmed down. I forget what our gimme one was for hardware. And then it was keypad entry, which is deceptively hard when you come in. It sounds super easy, and it's a trap, and there's certain things we're looking for, and I can talk about that at some point. That'd all have to be off the record, though. They'd be so pissed if I was giving away their...
Oh, they already hate me, but I don't want to get you in trouble. Yeah. Complex relationship. All right. Thank you very much for talking with me.
It was super fun. It's neat talking to you.
Yeah, I'll keep in touch. I'll let you know what's going on with everything. So thank you. Take care.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.